Hey BookTube! First off, this wig is really pink. Secondly, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is the Book Mage, and welcome to my next reading vlog challenge. So this vlog should kind of hopefully be a little bit different, because for the next however long this takes, I am going to be attempting to read only books outside of what I would consider like my normal comfort zone. So if you've been on my channel before, you probably already know, but for anyone who is new, the genre that I primarily read from is fantasy. Specifically, it tends to be adult high fantasy. I do sometimes branch out into sci-fi, horror, YA occasionally, but for the most part, I'm a real fantasy-loving hoe. And so for this next challenge vlog, I thought I would change things up and just read things that are not adult high fantasy and that I maybe wouldn't really reach for otherwise. Hence the getup. Not that I don't like pink, I do like pink, but I normally tend to dress quite goth, all in black. So yeah, I feel like I look pretty weird, even though I have had this hair colour before. So if you feel like you would like to watch me try and go completely cold turkey on the fantasy, and only read from the genres I don't normally read in, then stick around, get a cup of tea. I honestly might need something stronger by the end of this vlog, but I'm hoping it goes well. Fingers crossed. I'm hoping to read about 5 books in this vlog, because that seems like a good number. And best case scenario, I come out loving all of them. I have a feeling that might not happen, but I shall remain optimistic. So I am going to go and pick out my first read, and also take this off because I'm already sick of wearing this. Yes, I did just put this on for the sake of this intro, just as a spur of the moment thing. I was aiming for kawaii, but to be honest, I feel like I've gone so far past kawaii. I feel like I'm giving slutty housewife vibes. This was not my intent. So I am going to go figure out what I'm reading, and then I will check back in. And I will not be looking like all of this. Hello everyone. I realise this is a fantastic way to start the vlog, because I am looking pretty rough. I'm feeling pretty rough as well, and it's because last night I was out at a gig. I went out with a friend to see a band called As Sirens Fall, and they're fantastic. Their stage presence is amazing. It was such a fun gig, but it was so loud. It's only the second gig I've been to since the start of the pandemic, so my ears are still ringing. I'm exhausted. I'm pretty sure I have some bruises. So I had a great night, but it has not lined up very well with me wanting to start this vlog. But if anything, it's fine, you know, comfort is not the point of this vlog. I'm going to be uncomfortable in every aspect. So this is the perfect time, I think, to pick up a book and just have a quiet recovery sort of, I would say morning, but it's afternoon. So the first book I'm going to pick up for my out of my comfort zone little challenge is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Now the reason this one is out of my comfort zone is because I do not like anything to do with academia, anything to do with higher education, and this, I believe, is a dark academia. And guys, I don't know what to tell you, but the word academia is right there. So I think I might have to be reading about a setting which includes some higher education, which of all the books I feel like this one is less out of my comfort zone and more into my discomfort zone. That's why I'm starting with this one, I guess. But I bought this mainly because I loved the cover. I'd heard excellent things about it, and it's very, very short. I think I vaguely remember the plot is something there's a bunch of students, I think are they drama students or Shakespeare students or something like that? It gives me Shakespearean vibes. I could be wrong though. And I think it's one of them died or was killed or was murdered, and I don't know if anybody got blamed for it or if that's still a mystery, but I think this is set, I guess, several years after that, and I'm assuming it's going to be told partly through present day, partly through flashbacks, and you figure out what happened, what went on, but I'm guessing it has big dark academia vibes. I don't know how much it's actually going to affect me in terms of my mental health. I don't think my mental health could really be much worse this month. So honestly, everything about this, it's both the worst time and the perfect time to pick up this book. So, and it's very short as well. That is my plan for the day. I'm going to have a good crutal, or attempt to, and read this. I guess I will keep checking in and letting you know where I'm at. I haven't set myself the challenge to not DNF anything, so if I really, really hate it, or it's really, really affecting me, then I could DNF it. Same with any of the other books on this list, but ideally I would like to finish them to at least I don't know, it's kind of the point of this vlog, you know, it's a challenge for me. I'm reading things that have no magic, no dragons, no vampires. Oof, wish me luck. Okay, technically an update. I'm actually on page 1. I'm not even halfway down the first page of the prologue, but one of the characters is complaining that I guess the main character has used the word fortnight, And apparently, like, this is like, oh, you would use the word fortnight because you're in the theatre.
One eternity later.
Hello. So, I realise the fresh out of the shower look is maybe, like, not the most professional, but this video's already gone to hell, so what does it matter? Yeah, I think it has been about, like 3 months since the last clip. I guess the immediate takeaway is I do not enjoy reading outside of my comfort zone. Or more specifically, maybe I just really do not enjoy this book. So, this is how far I got. So, I got to page 33. So yeah, that was back in November, and we're now at the end of January. I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. So I did still want to continue with this vlog because I know this is kind of like, people really like this book. I probably shouldn't have picked it up with like wet shower hands, but whatever. I don't see why. I mean, I'm only like 30-ish pages in, so I don't really have much of an opinion yet. I do remember though, I think like a month ago when the last time I filmed, I'm pretty sure I stopped filming because like my camera battery died and I could not be bothered to get a new one, and then I couldn't be bothered with the book. So I honestly think one of the last things I was saying, he says something to like the police detective person who comes to visit him. He says some sort of like theatre related turn of phrase, which is like a common saying, and the detective guy is like, oh, he's such a theatre kid, and in my head I'm like, I don't remember exactly what the phrase was, but I do not remember it being that specific to like theatre kids. As for the flashbacks, oh, it drags. It took me like so long to get through, like just like these 30-something pages. Every page or so, I kept putting this book down. I'm just not engrossed in it, like at all. It honestly might just be because it's the beginning, and okay, excuse the towel hair, but like the towel was getting like too heavy on my head. Yeah, I really did not want to keep picking this up. Evidently, I didn't do that for like nearly 3 months, so great. But like, it honestly might just be because it's the beginning, so like I'm fine continuing with this story, and I have literally zero interest in anything in this book so far. I don't want to hate the book. I want to know why everyone likes it so much, and like, I like Shakespeare. I enjoy Shakespeare. I'm gonna give this like another go. Like, I'm not forbidding myself from DNFing anything in this TBR. I'm kind of hoping not to do that because like ideally the whole point of like reading outside of your comfort zone, I don't want to DNF things because I wasn't expecting to love anything in this vlog in the way that like I tend to expect I'm going to like a lot of the books that I pick up, assuming it's something I will like. Does that make sense? But I do want to give it a fair go, and it's not that I can't like things like this, it's just that I don't typically. I'm going to keep going, and hopefully it gets better, and hopefully like the ideal is that I come out of this enjoying the book. We'll see. I don't have a whole lot of faith, but maybe I can just like power through it. We'll see. Hello. So first things first, yes, I know I'm in like the same jumper as the last time I filmed, I'm pretty sure, but like this is the last time I'm gonna get to wear this, I think, until like December, so it's what we're going with. Secondly, and probably most importantly for this vlog, I actually finished If We Were Villains, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. So I feel like explanations are needed. I can say the beginning of the book did drag for me, but like it really picked up towards like the middle half, and I also really enjoyed the end. So this is probably like the best case scenario for this book, because there was a point where I was thinking like, is this going to end up being a 2-star read? But I will take a 4-star read. That's better than I expected. That's a lot better than I expected. So my thoughts after finishing this are, while I did enjoy this, and I think I really did like the writing, I think ML Rio is a good writer, although so often I was like really engrossed and really enjoying the writing, and then I'm thinking, hang on a minute, half of what I'm reading in like the pages that I'm enjoying is just direct quotations from Shakespeare. So I don't know if that was a bit of a cheat, because like I really enjoy reading Shakespeare. Like if you took something else that I enjoyed and like literally just pasted it word for word into another book, would it make me like that book more? I think I do like the author's writing as it is anyway. I do think some of my enjoyment definitely came from the fact that I was reading like Shakespeare quotations out of context and sort of like recontextualized as like conversations between these characters. I really liked that. It may just be because I enjoy Shakespeare and I would have enjoyed it in any context, but I still enjoyed it, so it's fine. I will say, I know that a lot of other booktubers have really enjoyed this book, and a lot of them have been like mind blown, and I assumed that was something to do with like a twist or a reveal. I saw basically everything coming. I don't know if that's just because I don't know, like I feel like I think I've said this before, like if you read enough literature, or like even when watching like TV shows and movies, you get used to certain tropes, you get used to certain twists, and like especially when it comes to Shakespeare and like this kind of like there was a lot of foreshadowing done, so like I don't think they were meant to be like mind-blowing. And the main character in this, whose perspective you're reading from, is very naive, like it's said several times, and I am not. So like while it may have been like a twist and a reveal for the main character and their perspective, for everyone it's like, yeah, anyone who isn't as naive as the main character is gonna know exactly what's going on. Like, we knew this. I'm not sure what about this book other people find like mind-blowing, and maybe it is the writing and maybe it is the characters. I did really come to enjoy the relationships between the characters a lot more. It is dark academia, but so much of this is just kind of like pure teenage drama. It's teenage drama like against the backdrop of like Shakespeare and the theatre, which, and to be honest, a lot of Shakespeare is teenage drama, like Romeo and Juliet, potentially the most famous teenage drama. So yeah, I think it worked. I enjoyed it. So yeah, I felt like it was satisfying. I felt like it had decent emotional payoff. I came to like the characters, and weirdly did not absolutely tank my mental health. So yeah, a surprising 4-star read. I suppose the only thing I'm glad about, like if this had been like about like STEM majors or something, I would never in a million years have managed to give this 4 stars. Like the Shakespearean references really saved this for me, I think, and it made it feel a bit more relatable. I'm absolutely not a theatre kid, like you cannot get me onto a stage, but I like Shakespeare. I really like Shakespeare. And one thing I ended up doing, like pretty much like when I was like maybe like halfway through this, I already have the complete works of Shakespeare in like I got given it as a gift. It's like quite an old edition, but I did end up ordering a new edition, like a complete edition of all of Shakespeare's works, because I feel like rereading some now. So that is what it is. But that's to say, book 1 down, which means that I can move on to something else. And back when I started doing this vlog, I'd ordered what at the time was like a new release, and then because I wasn't doing this vlog I completely forgot about it, so it's still in its packaging, which means we get to unbox it, which is fun for me. So my next read that is out of my general comfort zone is going to be The Butcher and the Wren by Elena Urquhart. First of all, this is super short. I didn't realise like how tiny this novel would be. The reason I picked this up is because, well, one, it was a new release at the time. Most importantly, I often listen to the Morbid podcast, so this is written by one of the women who, like, they co-host like a true crime sort of sometimes paranormal podcast. So I tend to listen to things like podcasts. I usually flip between like Morbid or like The Adventure Zone, usually if I'm drawing or if I'm doing something like getting ready and putting on makeup or something and I want to listen to something in the background. Normally because like audiobooks don't really work for my like ADHD brain, so I need to like be able to lose focus. So this is the debut novel from one of the Morbid hosts. I'm pretty sure it's like a crime thriller, which I honestly don't know if I've ever read. So I actually literally have zero idea what this is about. So it says, can a medical examiner outsmart a serial killer? So this is set in deep Louisiana. A serial killer with a taste for medical experimentation is completing his most ambitious project yet. Then it goes on to say, the main character has an encyclopedic knowledge of humanity's darkest minds, years of experience examining their victims. Forensic pathologist Dr. Wren Muller is the best there is. So yeah, there's a serial killer on the loose and a medical examiner who I guess is sick of his shit and is out to track him down. It's really short, so I'm hoping that this will be like fast and punchy. The text is also pretty big, so I'm hoping that I can have this finished pretty soon. And if I end up liking this one as much as I did the first book, then this is going to turn out to be like a pretty good vlog. Hello, okay, so not the most eventful update. I'm literally only like 10 pages in. I want to DNF this book so bad. Oh, I wasn't expecting this. I know this is like an early point at which to like judge a book, but this book is so bad. Basically, all that's happening in the first chapter is you're seeing things from like the serial killer's perspective, which I didn't really expect, but that's fair enough. The way that they're characterized and like it's not even the kind of character that they are, it's just the way that it's done is so boring. You can tell me that like they've got a routine and they're really meticulous and that like they, I don't know, like treat people and murder people in a specific way. Like it's that kind of trope that I kind of hate, where like a serial killer won't just be like, admit that just they're murdering victims, they have to call them guests, and they have to be like, be quiet in my home, it's rude to be loud in somebody else's home. And it's like, I understand, but like, it annoys me, my battery's flashing. So this is not off to a great start. The writing is the main thing that's bad. I think that like somebody can be good at writing a story, like you might have good characters and you might have a good plot, and this might have a fantastic plot, but the writing, my dudes, it's so bad. It genuinely sounds like the kind of thing that like when you would swap stories with people in high school. It's that kind of level of writing, and I feel really mean saying that because like I don't dislike this author, I bought it because like I like something else that they do. But on the other hand, it's like, you know, she'll be fine, she's got a podcast, like she's doing okay. Like, you can't be great at everything, and maybe her plot and her characters and like maybe it will be like an exciting read, but the actual words on the page are just poor. It might have been better as a script. I don't know. And it's just like the way that it's just not good writing, and it's always like, he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this, and it's like, I can't tell if that's meant to be like, if we're writing in like a weird stilted way because the character themselves, we're not reading from like their exact train of thought, but it definitely colours the narrative a bit. So I'm like, maybe it's kind of awkwardly written because the character is kind of like awkward, but at the same time I'm like I would have to get to somebody else's perspective to see that, but I feel like it's not going to be that. I feel like it's not trying to do it on purpose. I feel like it's just kind of not great. So like, I am going to push on, but oh my, like, I so don't want to read this. I'm really hoping, like, I'm not going to judge the whole book, like I'm not going to DNF it here, even though I really, really want to. I'm going to get through maybe like at least like 2 or 3 chapters just so that I can see what the writing's actually like, and maybe the plot will be good and it will like draw me in. But I just so don't care about this serial killer. I so do not like the writing style. I do not think it is going to be written very well. Part of me thinks like, because obviously if you've got like a platform and you've got followers and you're already like famous, for want of a better word, like you already have like a following, then it's kind of like, it's much easier to market your book and you're kind of guaranteed a lot of sales. And I think this is like a bestseller or something, because it's like, obviously, because like the author has like a lot of fans from her podcast, and part of me wonders, would this book have been picked up on its own merit if the publishers hadn't seen like an easy sale, basically? And on the other side of that, I feel like people with followings, do their books and things get like rushed out the door because they know it'll be an easy sale? Whereas I feel like maybe if this had been written by somebody who didn't have a following, maybe like more work would have been put into it, and they might have got like, I don't know, I feel like the editors could have done more with this. I feel like more could have been done with this. I don't feel like it reads like it's in a publishable state. I don't feel like this level of like writing would normally get published, which is on the other hand making me think maybe the plot is fantastic and maybe it all relies on the plot, which like, if you've got a fantastic plot and a fantastic hook and it's entertaining, then to hell with the writing style, that's totally fine. But if it doesn't have that, I'm thinking that this is just a case of like, I don't know, and it's not, I feel like that's unfortunate for like all parties involved, because I don't know, like maybe they're just not like ready to be a writer, or maybe this book just wasn't ready to put out. So that's how I'm feeling at the moment, which is not great. I'm gonna read some more. I will check in again. My battery is so about to die. I'm not feeling good. I hope this is like the last book where I hated it and then loved it. I feel like we're not gonna have a repeat of that, so I'm just not having a great time. So my battery is literally gonna die, so I do have to leave. But I'll just pray that something keeps me from DNFing this. Hello, so update. I DNF'd it. I got like 50 pages in, which is like 20% of the way through, which I feel like that's far enough. Like, I feel like that's fair. And like, I am disappointed because like, I did want to read this and I did want to support it. I wouldn't have purchased it with the intent of DNFing a book. Like, I would never do that. Because I feel like it's a waste of money, and it's so short, and I could not even finish this book. It's just bad. I just genuinely can't stand to read any more of this. I'm sure there are people that might enjoy this. I'm just so not one of those people. And I wanted to try like books from genres that are not the kind that I would typically read, but I think this is a bad representation of the genre. I kind of feel like I cheated myself a bit, because I don't think it's the genre specifically, but like, I'll never know. Like, this book is just bad either way. Like, if this was a fantasy, I would still not want to read it. It mainly was just like the writing that I hated, but I started making like a list and like I ended up like on a whole rant. Like, there's so much here. Like, I just could not read anymore. The writing for a start was just awful. It sounds harsh, and like, I know a lot of effort has gone in to like writing a book. Like, I know sitting down and actually writing a book takes like time and dedication and effort and passion. There are plenty of things that I try to do and that I might try really hard at and that I'm just bad at. And I just have to accept that I just do not have a particular skill, and that's just how I feel. Sometimes like words would just be like reused several times in like quick succession, like the same word to describe like the same action again and again and again. And I think sometimes they just genuinely don't understand certain words. Like, there's literally a scene, like, we all know what foreboding means, right? It's a very basic word, and yet the character Wren is looking down at like a murdered corpse and decides that like the scene is foreboding. I'm like, foreboding of what? The corpse is right there. That's literally like looking at a dead body and going, I have a feeling that something bad is going to happen. It's already happened. The corpse is right there. You can't describe a scene as foreboding if the bad thing has already happened and is right in front of you, because it's not foreboding anything. You've forgotten the fore part of foreboding. Like, just describe them in a different way. I think I can't remember if I mentioned before as well, but like when it's describing actions, it's like, he did this, he thinks this, he feels this, he does this, he does this, and it's just like, please pick a different like sentence structure, anything at all. The main character Wren in this is, I think, like a forensic pathologist or something, and I believe that the author has like a similar job, and obviously she runs like a true crime podcast, so like she clearly knows what she's talking about, especially when it comes to like descriptions of corpses and the process of like identifying certain things about like time of death or like injuries or stages of decomp or things like that. Like, clearly I know the author knows what they're talking about, and in my head I assumed that it would be like that kind of level of writing and knowledge, but the way that that knowledge is presented to us here reads like you're reading somebody's notes from like forensics class, because it's not integrated into the text or the story or dialogue or anything in any sort of natural way. There are whole paragraphs that are just like, this is what lividity is, this is how we identify it, and this is how we look at it, this corpse has this level of lividity, this is what this means, this suggests that she died at this time, and it's like, oh, please, just make this a bit of dialogue. Just make one of the characters be like, what's the lividity look like? And then another character be like, it's this. I'm guessing this amount of time has passed. And just leave it there. It could literally be like 2 freaking lines of dialogue. I do not need your freaking like spark notes from class. It literally sounds like somebody's been in like a lecture and like has been taking little bullet pointed notes, and I do not need basic ass information presented to me in this way. Anybody who like is buying this book that follows her podcast already knows what like rigor mortis and lividity and all this sort of stuff is. Like, we know these things, because if you have an interest in true crime, like, you're gonna know some of these basic ass terms. But at the same time, for like readers who you might just attract, like a reader who's never heard of you before, who just likes this genre, if you read from this genre, you probably know a lot of this as well. And maybe if you're just a new reader, having it as just like a couple lines of dialogue embeds it within the story so it doesn't sound so like obtrusive in the text. I feel like it's just such a missed opportunity, because like that could have been one of the big selling points, is that like it could have felt very realistic, because obviously she does work with like dead bodies, and so I feel like that really could have come through in the text, but it just doesn't. And I feel like the main character is very much based on her and her like experiences and her personality and her interests, which is fine if you want to write from like your own perspective, especially if you have like an interesting job. But presenting it in like the most boring way possible, of just having, here is this phenomena, here's how you look at it, here's what it means, this is what it means for this corpse, it's like, oh, just, it's the most boring possible way of giving me the information. The book also does a lot of telling and not showing. It pretty much all it does is tell and not show. It spells out like exactly how characters feel and exactly what they're doing. It's like Jeremy likes this, he thinks XYZ, Jeremy doesn't like this, Jeremy always has to do this, Jeremy likes this. And it's like, you could just like show us the character like experiencing something or like seeing something and just like show me their reaction to it without saying he doesn't like it. Just like just show me the reaction, because like I guarantee I can work it out for myself. I guarantee other readers are like not stupid enough to like misinterpret a character's reaction to something. You have to trust that your reader will like know what things mean, not in a mean way, but the book is just not very smart. And like I said, for somebody who works like in that field, I assumed that she would have like this like wealth of knowledge. But there's literally a part in this book where the characters are discussing like how smart and unusual it is for the murderer to have like messed with their ability to tell the time of death by putting the body in like a fridge or a freezer, which has obviously preserved them, which means that they can't determine the exact time of death. And it's like, actually a lot of people would know to do that. Like, even accidentally, even if the intent was not to like mess with them, everyone knows that putting something in like a fridge or a freezer will slow decomp. Even if you're literally just thinking in the context of food. Like, if you have a dead body and you think like, oh, I just want this to like not go stinky real fast, a person might put it in a fridge or a freezer because they know that that works on food, which is something they have like every day. It's just like an organic thing, and that's how fridges and freezers work. I feel like this is not an uncommon thing, especially if you're like a serial killer. You're absolutely going to know how to like preserve a body to like dispose of it later, even if you're not actively trying to mess with the authorities. I don't understand why they immediately know that putting a body in a freezer is like the killer taunting them directly or like specifically messing with them and their work, because it's like, well, I do not think it is the sort of clever ploy it is presented to be. Like, refrigeration. Seriously. The other thing is the characters are just bland, they're boring. The killer is like basic white guy without empathy, and I've only read a few chapters from his perspective. I still don't know why we're getting his perspective, to be honest, because there's no like creeping dread in the background of not knowing like who the serial killer is or like where they could be. Like, you get things from his perspective, so like you know what he's doing and you know the state of his victims, and like it shows too much. Because especially if I'm in like the head and the perspective of a serial killer, I want to feel creeped out by them. They should be like eerie and like icky, like gross feeling. Like, I shouldn't want to, like, I understand the people in his life that know him, he's like masking, but to be in his head or hear and see things from his perspective should make me uncomfortable, and it doesn't. He just reads like an annoying, like just a generic like guy. If the narration of his chapters is from his perspective, which I think it must be, because in his chapters there are several descriptions of women that are just like pretty judgmental depictions of women for like no obvious reason that I do not think are the author's feelings, so they must be from his, they must be like coloured by like his feelings and his thoughts, even though it's not in first person. But how are you going to give me that serial killer perspective and it's not creepy and it's not intimidating and it's just dull. The things that he does are just so casually described, there's just like nothing to gain from reading his perspective. And because it's from his perspective, like his victims are also never humanized because he doesn't see them that way. The text talks about them the way that he sees them, which is as like inconsequential, which means that I don't care about them. Like, I do not care about these fictional people. I'm sorry, Katie and Matt from the club are not giving me anything. And the last thing that annoys me is just like the name dropping of other serial killers. I understand that the author is a fan of these things, and like it might be fun for like fans of her and her podcast to be like, oh, she name dropped Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer and it's like Israel Keys, and it's like, okay, but also what is this adding to the text? Other than people know that these serial killers exist, and like I don't really like the way that it talks about them, and it's just like, it feels like padding, it feels pointless. Instead of just name dropping other famous serial killers, just give me a good original serial killer instead of Jeremy. I don't know if it's just flexing knowledge because she's like a true crime podcast host, but it doesn't add anything to the story. I'm literally meant to be going into a meeting in a sec, so like I have to go, but this was so bad and I'm so disappointed. I think this is the first book I've ever officially DNF'd on YouTube, I think. Really did not like this. I don't see the merit in reading it. I'm not going to like it, so I'm not going to finish it. I feel like that's pointless and I'm really not enjoying it, so I'm letting myself put this down. And I'm going to try and pick up something else that is also out of my comfort zone but that I might actually enjoy. It's really unfortunate, but that's where I'm at. Hello. Okay, so I've calmed down a little bit post-meeting. So my next attempted read is going to be Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And firstly, again, another Shakespeare quotation. as a title. I feel like we've been in a very like Shakespearean mood for this vlog, completely unplanned. And saying that, I think I mentioned this book arrived super fast. Look at the size of it. This is huge. This is bigger than like my whole head and so heavy. I kind of wish I could start just reading Shakespeare for this vlog, honestly. But yeah, this is a Macbeth. This is a Macbeth quote. I mean, that played a big part in If We Were Villains, and I just feel like I've somehow accidentally fallen down some sort of like Shakespeare-inspired literature wormhole. Which is maybe why this one did not serve me very well, because there was no Shakespeare in here. So yeah, I would never have picked this up if it were not for BookTube hype. This book has been like blowing up on BookTube recently, and my arms are so tired for no reason. I don't know why. I find it really difficult to see the allure of like contemporary fiction, I guess. So I think this is an adult novel. Yeah, the main reason I picked this one up is because, one, I want to see like what the hype is about at a point in time when other people are still like reading this and like it's fresh, it's new, so I kind of want to see what it's about, and this vlog kind of was like the perfect place for this. This, I'm pretty sure, it has something to do with like video games and game design, and I think it's either set in the 90s or part of it is, so I'm getting retro video game kind of feels, and apparently it's well written. People have really enjoyed this. I think it's like 2 people making a video game and something. I heard shiny cover in video games and I was like, yeah, that's good enough for this vlog. I don't know if it's going to have relationship stuff in it. Usually if the crux of a story is whether or not 2 people get together and get their happy ending, I have zero thoughts about that. Like, and honestly, in terms of most of this whole book, I'm pretty much like zero thoughts, head empty. If the writing is good and if it's compelling and if it gives me the kind of like retro video game vibes that like I enjoy and that I'm kind of craving, then like I might enjoy this. So I'm hoping, given that I've like only heard like good things about this, that I will only feel good things about this. And I really need a better book than The Butcher and the Wren. So I'm hoping that BookTube has not done me dirty and that this book is actually as good as people are saying. So I guess this is going to be my next read. Hello, update time. First things first, please excuse this. I've just had like an 11-ish hour workday, and also I got like maybe like 2 hours of sleep. So I'm doing great, because even that aside, I am having a day. But I did finish Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and it took me many tomorrows to finish it. It took me like a week to read it, which like, I was reading way faster than that. It was just, this is just really aggressively bad reading. So I finished the book like the day before yesterday and just did not have a chance to update, and apparently this is the best moment I have. Characters were fine. The story made sense, and I think the author is a good writer. I think the prose was good, and like I really do enjoy the sort of early gaming landscape as like as part of the plot, but at the same time, I will say right off the bat, so many people on BookTube have said things like that this book is amazing, that this book is like their best book of the year. I don't see it, and I really like video games, like, so it can't be that. It has to be everything else. And like the characters are kind of fine. And like this is what I expect a contemporary to be like. This is what I expect like your average well-written contemporary to be like. If people are reading books that all read like The Butcher and the Wren, and then you pick up Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, I totally understand. But going from one to the other was probably like a massive system shock, and because like it kind of is a little bit for me. So I don't know, maybe this is like phenomenal compared to other contemporary, which does not give me much hope for like the rest of the genre. And I say this like I didn't kind of already know it, hence like the point of this video, and the reason that I don't read contemporary is that I just think that contemporary is not for me. It's fine, but the whole time I'm reading this book, I don't care. It really dragged, and it started doing this thing, and I like this could be like, I don't know, just me being like ADHD brain me. I would be reading and I'd realise like my eyes are moving across the lines, but I'm not reading. Like I'm sat here and there's nothing going in, there's nothing going on up here, and I'm just like, it's more interesting for me to have no thoughts, to read nothing, to have no experience whatsoever, but just move my eyeballs back and forth, and I'm like, okay, then I would have to go back and like figure out where I got to and start rereading from that point. And again, there was nothing bad about the writing, apart from the parts where it just like went on and on and on about stuff that I don't care. Like, I'm gonna start putting on like moisturiser to like give me something to do. Yeah, I think part of me just thinks that like, it might be a well-written contemporary. However, I just really think that the genre is not for me. And I mean, I can say that I gave it a go. And I think it is specifically in books, because I'll read manga that's more contemporary. Like, I enjoy some contemporary manga, and I can enjoy some contemporary TV shows. And I'm pretty sure my favourite movie is a contemporary. However, I just don't like them in book form. It's like my body and my brain, it just rejects it. It's like if you had, it doesn't matter how good it's written, it's like if you had like a really, really good chef who makes like a really good spaghetti. I'm guessing most people would really, really like that. Even people that are like neutral towards spaghetti could probably like eat it and be like, I'm getting nourishment from this at least. Fun fact about me, and this is like not even part of the metaphor, like, I can't eat tomato. My body cannot ingest tomato, it makes me real sick. So like if I were to try and eat that spaghetti, whether I wanted to or not, whether it's well cooked or not, there's just stuff in there that I can't have. And I just think that maybe my brain is the same way. I just don't think that this genre is for me. So yeah, ultimately, I think that the book was well written, but it was written well for someone who isn't me. And like, that's fine, that's fair. So I gave it a 3 stars in the end, I think, because while I did not enjoy reading it, like, it wasn't boring, and there was one section that I hated, and like I wished I could have skipped it, but like I'm one of those people where even if I don't like the book, I have to read every single page, like, and some of them were completely superfluous. And like there was a section in there that I really hated more than any other section, and because I don't want to spoil things to say like what it is, but if you've read the book, it's the section that's like different. It's like the second to last chapter bit, or maybe like the one before that. Yeah, I gave it a 3 stars because it is well written. There's nothing bad about it. I just don't enjoy it. Like, I feel like it was making a lot of good points along the way about like, there's commentary at least once, and then sometimes multiple times for things like race and gender and like self-worth and ownership. There's a lot of like LGBT content as well, which the book is like very casual about. I feel like I don't think any character in these books, I don't think anyone was straight. I don't remember a straight character. Oh, and a lot of disability rep. So like, I like that it was diverse, and I liked that it showed a lot of different perspectives from like coming from very similar situations, but ultimately it just isn't a story that like I don't know what it is. I feel like if it was in a more easily digestible medium, maybe that is why I can enjoy this kind of story. If it's like a TV show or a movie or a manga, I wouldn't gravitate towards it, but like I could like watch it for like an hour or something, and that might be fine. I just think that this is the wrong book for me, the wrong medium for this story for me. If this were like a real company, I would find it like more interesting if I was reading just a Wikipedia article about like how they, like how these games came to be made and like how these people came to like work on these games. I would find that more interesting without all the like personal stuff in between, because I don't care about other random fictional people. So I did finish that. It's not the result I would have liked. Like, I would have liked to have loved the book. Like, that would be like the best case scenario. At least I can say that I've read it. Maybe I got ahead of myself. Maybe I was just expecting to like this one because I'd had like good luck already. That said, I have already started reading the next book. I was honestly really worried that this vlog was gonna like run way over time, because this is not the only thing I want to do this month. But a while ago, and I have not hauled this book because it's borrowed, but a while ago a friend lent me her copy. I've taken the dust jacket off, but she lent me her copy of The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa. I was looking at this and I was like, I can definitely read this in like a couple days, right, at most, like, because I'm at work. When I look at a book like this and I feel like I can read that in a day or a couple days if I'm like exhausted and working. However, that's when it's fantasy. When it's like a book that I don't want to read, sometimes I'll read 6 pages and be like, I physically can't read any more on this day. I was a bit worried about this. However, this is magical realism. Again, is not really the genre for me. I'm considering it like, it is kind of a contemporary, it's kind of magical realism. But I think she thought I would like this because, one, it's got a cat in it, and we both freaking love cats. I consume a lot of like Japanese media, I guess, and I have family members that live and work in Japan, and I've learned a little bit of the language a couple times over the years. I'm actually this far in, and I managed to read this last night. Despite my appearance of being exhausted, I actually can't sleep. I have like that offset circadian rhythm thing, so it might have been like 1 AM, but my brain just did not want to go to sleep, so I ended up picking this up. So I'm actually on page 59, and that's about like a quarter of the way through this book. So I reckon tomorrow is Friday, and I reckon I can finish this Friday night. I'm not reading today, but I can finish this Friday night. It does have massive text, and it is very easy to read. I have less than 200 pages to go, and I reckon that means that even if I start disliking this at any point, it's a small enough book with big enough text and easy enough prose that I can probably get through it really fast. Do you know, it's fine. I like the cat, and I like that it's about books. The plot, again, it is that kind of like weird nonsensical magical realism, and I feel like the fact that it's obviously coming from a foreign culture as well gives it like this sort of added like strangeness, because if you've ever read like foreign myths and things, it's like if you think about like the myths and legends of your own country, it seems like they make sense until you think about them. When you hear one from somebody else's culture, you immediately think like, that's weird, that makes no sense. But it's only because like they're not your weird nonsensical myths, do you know what I mean? And it kind of feels like that. I'm enjoying it enough. I don't get it, to be honest. It's not my kind of thing at the moment so far, so I'm liking the cats, I'm liking the books. We'll see if I come to like it in the end. Yeah, this update has been all over the place. And I'm gonna go, and it's probably gonna be like at least a day or more. Oh no, wait, is it Friday tomorrow? I'll check in at some point. I'll check in at some point. Hi, okay, it's now Saturday morning, and I did in fact finish The Cat Who Saved Books. I'm not sure if I mentioned like the plot of this book at any point, but basically it's following like a young high school boy, and he lives with his grandfather who owns this like small like independent kind of antique bookshop, but right at the start his grandfather has passed away, and so the shop has passed to Natsuki. He's kind of at like this turbulent point, and then sort of randomly one day in the shop a talking ginger tabby cat turns up and tells him that basically he's going to take him to like this other place, this like other dimension, because he needs his help to like save books. So that's kind of the plot. There are like multiple like, not like tests or challenges, but like multiple little individual like adventure sort of things that they have to go on to save these books, and they're fine, they're totally fine. It's just that I don't think I personally got that much out of them. It is very sort of like whimsical and nonsensical. It feels like it's too easy, it's too straightforward, like it's very much like, it's so formulaic. It's like you go to this place, and then with a very basic piece of very obvious logic, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we fixed that, onto the next thing, and it's just a bit like, okay. I get that that is kind of like the point of this. It's meant to just be like a little easygoing read, and you can tell that it's written from the perspective of somebody who likes books and loves books and wants books to be read and treated well. So I feel like if you like books and like you enjoy books and reading, like it's probably going to be very relatable, the way that books are talked about and praised. I can't find the quotation because like I didn't mark it down, but there's a point where like one of the characters in this is reading a book that's like way out of her comfort zone, and she's saying it that like because she doesn't like it and because it's difficult to understand, it's taking her like a really long time to get through. And I'm like, especially while doing this vlog, I'm like, yeah, that's very relatable. But somebody says something to, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't find the quote, but it's something along the lines of, it's obviously going to take you like a long time and a lot of effort to read through this book because it's not something that you know, it's not something that you are used to, it's not like your usual sort of thing. So it's obviously going to take you longer because like you're discovering something new and trying something new. And so, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably very apt for like me in this vlog right now. The only downsides to this, however, like I said, I did find it very formulaic, very repetitive, and just a bit too sort of whimsical and nonsensical and like non-structured for like my liking. It was a bit, it was fine, it was totally fine. I just didn't personally get that much enjoyment out of it, so I think I'd probably give this like maybe like a 2.5. There's nothing really bad about it, but I just don't like, I'm fine having read this, I just didn't really like connect with it in that strong of a way. And it's probably saying something, especially because this book has a lot of things that I like in it, like books and cats, and it's set in Japan, and there are all these like different sort of like weird other places, and there's a lot of talk about like books and liking books, and it fits with this vlog. And yet enjoyment wise, I just didn't really enjoy it that much. I just did think it was a bit simple. It feels like kind of like a children's story but for adults, and it is very firm in the way that it thinks about books and the way that you should have books and treat books. And like I agree with most of it, and I think some of those disagreements do come from the fact that obviously like the publishing landscape and like the available books must be different between like being in Japan and like being in England. Like what I have access to is obviously clearly very different to what this author, when they wrote this book, had access to. I can appreciate it. I think it's totally fine, and it's really short, and like if you like this kind of thing, if you like sort of like whimsy and kind of like, I don't know, like a very straightforward, easygoing kind of read with like a few fun quotes about like books and reading and things, then I would say maybe give it a go. But again, personally, it's not for me, and I really did have high hopes for this one because it's books, it's cats, and this was lent to me by a friend, but unfortunately it just was not my favourite. So that sort of brings me on to the rest of today, and the last book that I'm going to attempt to read for like this out of my comfort zone reading vlog is going to be like doubly, triply out of my comfort zone. When I was sort of like thinking about like what books I could pick up to read, obviously I'm thinking about books that I can pick up to read, and having just had the conversation about like book availability and like different ways of reading, do you know what I don't like? Audiobooks. I don't like audiobooks. The last time I listened to an audiobook I was a child, so that's how long it's been since I've listened to an audiobook. I just don't like them. And also one thing for me is like I have pretty bad like ADHD. I feel like if I'm reading a book, like I physically have it in my hands, it's like a whole process that I'm devoting my brain to, but if I'm just listening to something, it's very easy for me to like get distracted. I feel like with this whole reading outside of my comfort zone thing, it would be an idea for the last book that I read to be an audiobook, because not only am I going to pick a book that I wouldn't normally read, I'm going to read from a format that I would never normally read from. And so I went on a hunt for like, I like to read, like when I read a book, like I can read very, very fast, but if I'm reading like a fiction and it's for like enjoyment, I like to read a book at the speed at which I would personally like read it aloud. That's the kind of speed I like to read in my own like intonation, if that makes sense. And also it means that I'm gonna have to like read at like somebody else's pace with somebody else's intonation and like their pronunciations and their like stresses and emphasis on different things, and it's like that might not be where I would like that to be if I were reading it myself. So it kind of took me a while to figure out one that I think I would have a chance of enjoying, that is a medium out of my comfort zone, is going to be like given to me in a way that is like very different to like my normal act of reading, because it's just going to be like in my ears, and I don't know how this is going to work for like me and my ADHD. I have no idea how successful this is going to be because it's just not something I've tried. The closest I get is podcasts. I've managed to pay attention to podcasts, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, this works. The book that I've decided to go with, mainly because I've been hearing everybody talk about this, and I would never ever ever have picked this up if it were not for like this specific vlog, and it's I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Now this is classed as an autobiography, or it's autobiographical in nature. I think it's like called a memoir here. This is so far out of like my normal like wheelhouse of reading. I don't follow celebrities. Like I'd never heard of this person. I had never heard of her before. I think she was like a child actress, but apparently this is talking about like her experiences as a child actor and the issues that come with that. And also I think there's trigger warnings for like abuse and eating disorders, but I do know that this audiobook is narrated by the author herself, so I figure if I'm going to be getting like, it's this person's words and this person's experience, and she's going to be speaking them in the exact way that she wanted them to be spoken and to be heard, I'm like, okay. I feel like that kind of mitigates the issue of like me not liking the way that a narrator might speak something, because this is clearly exactly how it's meant to be delivered. While this is definitely not a topic I would normally gravitate towards like in any circumstance, I feel like I could find this interesting. I feel like it will probably be very engaging. I don't foresee it being like enjoyable in the way that a book is typically enjoyable, because this is going to be talking about like, I'm guessing, some harrowing stuff from somebody else's personal experience. I have no idea like what my enjoyment of this is going to be, or like how I'm going to feel about it, but yeah, this is my next challenge. This is what I'm going for. I will be listening to this on audio, and I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with myself while I listen to it. I might end up like, I don't know, editing some thumbnails or drawing, maybe. I have no idea what I'm going to do like with my hands while I'm listening to this, but I'll figure something out, and I'm hoping that I can't say like I'm going to hope that I'm going to enjoy this, because like I don't feel like that's what this is going to be, but I hope that I experience this as intended, and that hopefully my ADHD actually manages to like pay attention to this audiobook. So I think this is only short, like I think it's less than 10 hours long, and I'm probably going to end up listening to this on like double speed because ADHD brain, so I will check in when I have finished it. so I will update then. Hello, so it is time for a check-in, the last check-in of this vlog. So I am happy to update that I have finished I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Now this one, for obvious reasons, I'm not going to rate this the same way as I would like another book. I feel like it's very difficult to rate non-fiction because this is a non-fiction. I didn't even realise that going into it. Like when I was trying to think of like why is this so far out of my comfort zone, it's not only that it's a genre that I don't really read from, but it's the fact that that genre is also non-fiction. Like it's not even fiction. Again, very different to like anything that I would normally read, unless I'm reading like about like mushrooms or history or something. But in a way, I'm trying to say that I thought it was good, but like I can't say I found it entertaining, and I can't say I found it like I can't rate it in the same way that I would a normal book. So I'm not going to give this like a numerical rating, I'm just going to leave it. But I'm going to say I do think it is a good book and it's a good audiobook. So I do think as far as trying out an audiobook goes, this is probably a good call. I was correct in thinking that the book goes into like a lot of sort of hard topics, but a lot of it as well is like very anecdotal. It's kind of like a series of like memories of like stories and things that sort of lead up from how she got to this place and then how she's, I guess, moved into recovery. So yeah, I suppose I would recommend it if you're okay with like the content and the trigger warnings, because I guess this is a person who's decided to tell their story and like wants it to be heard and wants people to like know what they went through and understand where they're coming from. So on that basis, I would recommend it if you feel like this is the kind of thing that you could or would listen to. And I feel like that's kind of like brought the end of this vlog up a little bit more, because it was getting really rocky there in the middle. So I'm feeling like I have successfully challenged my like discomfort zone or like stepped outside of my comfort zone. I feel like I might like to like wrap this vlog up in a subsequent clip when I'm not like sat rotting in my bed like ready to go to sleep. I think this just reaffirms that like I know that I am reading the right genre. Like when I constantly just pick up fantasy, I know what I'm talking about. They're just the books that I like, and I feel like I'm just like comfortable and confident knowing that like that's what I like, that's what I like to read, that's what I want to read. Like sometimes you do think like with Tomorrow, Tomorrow and Tomorrow, I was thinking like, am I missing out? Because everyone loves this book so much. I was not missing out. I really wasn't missing out. It was the FOMO. I would never have normally picked that book up if I hadn't heard it being like hyped up on BookTube. So I'm pretty sure I could like trust my instincts more, except for The Butcher and the Wren. That one got sold to me on a podcast. That one is not my fault. Okay, this is getting slightly rambly, so I'm pleased to have completed my challenge. So I'm gonna sleep off like the slight audiobook days that I've got going on, and I think I will come back with like my final thoughts. Hello, okay, so welcome to the wrap-up portion of this video. I feel like this challenge was overall successful. There were definitely parts that went better than others, but ultimately I'm pretty pleased with like trying this out, and I'm mostly pleased with the results. I think I definitely would have liked to enjoy a few of these books better than I did. However, ultimately I think this just kind of proves that like I do know my taste, like I know what I like, and I read the books that I read and like choose for myself for a reason. It's not that I'm never going to step out of my comfort zone, it's just I feel like my comfort zone is less of a comfort zone and more of like a curated zone. Like I've learned to build up a TBR of books that like I know that I will like, and I have done that through experience. Like I know the kind of books that I like, so I feel like this has just kind of reaffirmed that I do know my own tastes. Fantasy is just my thing, and I think it always will be. But the thing is, I think after trying this out, I think I'm just like more comfortable in the fact that a lot of the time when I see a book, even if it's like a pretty edition, or even if somebody I know or somebody that I follow has been like raving about it, if I get the feeling that it isn't for me and I'm just trying it out because I just want to see like what the fuss is about, even if I don't think it'll work for me, I feel like at this point I should know that like maybe I just know better. And that was the thing, the one book in this vlog that really surprised me, which was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. That was definitely a book that is like out of my normal sort of like reading genre. But the difference is, that is a book that I hold for myself, just like without the intention of doing a challenge. Even though it was out of my comfort zone, that book came from like my existing TBR, and I think at the time something about it just, I think I got the feeling that even though it's out of my comfort zone, it might be like the kind of book that I would like to read. So that was, of all the books, that was the only one that came from my existing TBR. And the rest were either hauled for this video or borrowed. So they weren't books that I would have naturally picked up for myself if I weren't doing like this challenge to try and read like more widely and more varied. And I think that also says a lot because, again, even though that book was out of my like usual reading genre, it was still the one book that I liked more than the others. The ones that I hauled just for this challenge, like to try out, those were the ones that I didn't enjoy. And I'm mainly talking about The Butcher and the Wren, but it's not to say that I didn't enjoy Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow or The Cat Who Saved Books, but I feel like if those books were completely erased from my brain, I wouldn't feel like I'd lost anything. Like, if I had never read those books, I wouldn't feel like I was missing out. So I think even when a book is something that like maybe isn't the kind of book I would normally pick up, I think even then of those books I still somewhere just kind of like know which ones probably will work for me. I mean, there's always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be exceptions. I definitely like haul books that I think I'm going to love and they're fantasy and then they turn out to disappoint me. So like it's not always like 100% cut and dry one way or the other, but I'm pretty confident at this point that like I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that said, I kind of hope that this was as interesting for you as it was for me. Definitely a bit of a hectic vlog, especially considering that I started filming this back in November. But like, once we got over that first hurdle, I feel like I've pulled it back. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, like you watched the whole thing, leave me a little skull emoji. If River Villains was my favourite book of this challenge, and it has a skull on the cover, and also like I'm goth and I just like skulls. Like even my little throw pillows have like skulls on them, so leave me a skull. And I guess let me know, like, do you guys have like a favourite genre or like one genre that you read from more than any other, or are you like one of those people that just read widely, like you read anything? Because even of the channels that I follow for fantasy, most of them do still read like quite widely into like romance, non-fiction, contemporary. I want to know if anybody else out there is like very single-minded like me. I mean that in a good way though. So I feel like that's it. I think anything else would just be dragging it out at this point, and even at the end of this I'm definitely feeling like I'm in a good reading place, so I'm glad this is over and done with because I want to get on to like my next reading vlogging project. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye!